I was 29, and that day I quit my job. Not because I wanted to, but because I'd been laid off. Washington, D.C. is a city of opportunity, but sometimes it's oppressive. I left the office with a box in my hands, my forehead sweaty from stress, and a strange feeling of emptiness inside. The gray December evening didn't care that I'd lost my job. I told myself, the main thing is to go home. Just go home. At least Michael was home, my husband, the man I'd been with for almost 8 years. But on the way, I couldn't shake the strange feeling that something was wrong. A strange tension in my chest, a hunch that women often ignore, but it's rarely wrong. When I walked into the house, Michael was sitting on the couch with his laptop. He looked up, saw my face, and immediately understood. "What happened?" he asked. "I got laid off," I answered calmly, though I was shaking inside. He came over and hugged me. Technically, colder than before. I felt it physically, as if there was air between us that hadn't been there before. "Everything will be fine, Emma," he said. "You'll find a new place. You're smart." But even his voice had changed. Or was it just me? I tried not to think. I was just tired. I went into the kitchen to get some water. His phone was on the counter. Michael never hid it, and I never took it. We weren't in the habit of checking in with each other. But then the phone lit up. The screen glowed. The name appeared clearly. Alyssa. And then the message. "Why didn't you come today, Michael?" I froze. It was as if my brain had switched off for a second. Alyssa. His first love. I knew about her. They dated in college, broke up, but, as he said, it's all long forgotten. She moved to California. I worked at a marketing firm, I think. And 2 months ago, he said they had a new project with a colleague from the past. He clarified, just a coincidence, just work. And I believed him, but now that name was glowing right in front of me. Michael walked into the kitchen. I stood with the phone in my hand. He stood opposite me. For a second, the room fell silent. "Why are you holding my phone?" he asked. He didn't shout. He didn't get angry. He was scared. It was obvious. It lit up. "And the message," I said. I turned the screen toward him. He looked at it for exactly 1 second. His face twitched. He quickly took the phone from my hand and pressed the lock button. "It's work," he said too quickly. "Work? First love? Why didn't you come today? Is this a work message?" He turned away as if he thought I wouldn't notice. He swiped his finger across the phone screen to the messages menu. And a second later, I heard the distinctive sound deleted. I looked at him. He tried to act as if nothing had happened. "Why did you delete the message?" I asked. "Because it doesn't matter," Michael said, not even looking at me. "I didn't want you to worry about something trivial." Nonsense. My hands were still shaking. I couldn't even be angry yet. I just felt like something was crumbling. "Michael, tell me honestly, do you talk?" My voice was quiet. "Yes, for work," he replied. "That's all. I didn't go to the office today because I had calls. She just didn't know." But something about his explanation didn't add up. He spoke without looking me in the eye. He held the phone as if I was about to see something else. And most importantly, he'd never deleted messages before. Never. I sat in the chair looking at him and realized something had started. And it wouldn't stop on its own. I didn't know what lay ahead. Lies, trips for work, nights when he'd come home later than usual. But that evening, when I lost my job and saw a message from his first love, I realized that maybe I was losing more than just my job. The next morning began quietly. Michael left for work as usual, but something was already off. The deletion of the message from yesterday and his nervous behavior hung in the air like a fog that wouldn't clear. I decided to have breakfast in the kitchen and calm down a bit. A cup of coffee, toast, all as usual, but my thoughts were bothering me. Why did Emily write, "Why didn't you come today?" if he was supposed to be at a meeting? And why had the message disappeared? I tried to put my emotions aside and think logically. My instinct told me something was hiding. I opened my laptop and checked Michael's calendar. He usually leaves meetings and notes. There were indeed some client appointments, but one of them, dinner, made me freeze. Emily Harper, the date last night, exactly when he said he'd be late for work. At first, I wanted to close the laptop. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe I'm overthinking it. But a voice inside me said, keep looking. I didn't dig too deep, just checked her public social media pages, and I immediately noticed a photo of Emily from a restaurant in Washington posted yesterday. The date matched. The time was around 7 in the evening. I felt a chill down my spine. Coincidence? Unlikely. When Michael came home later than usual, I tried to act calm. He walked into the house and smiled as if nothing had happened, but I noticed details I'd previously ignored. His shirt smelled of someone else's perfume, not mine. His hair was slightly tousled as if he was in a hurry. I noticed a delay on my watch. He said he'd been doing everything at home. Are you late again? I asked calmly. He smiled, but his gaze slid to his phone. Long day, he said. Everything's fine. I nodded, but my heart was already failing me. His words rang true, but his actions were quite different. That evening, I stayed home, and he was working from the office again. In reality, I was discreetly watching him through the windows. I saw his car wasn't in the office parking lot, but somewhere on the street near a restaurant. I checked my phone. No work calls. I remembered the message. Why didn't you come today? He deleted it, but his behavior gives away more than his words. Later that night, when he returned, I decided to ask him directly. Michael, what happened last night? He froze for a second. I told you I was busy, he replied evenly. At the restaurant? I clarified. He looked down. I just met up with an old friend, that's all. I knew it was a lie. The look, the nervous movements, the deleted message, all of it made it clear he wasn't telling the truth. An old friend? I repeated, looking straight at him. He said nothing. He just looked down and stopped smiling. And then, for the first time, I began to wonder. Maybe this wasn't just a casual message, not just a friendly encounter. Maybe Emily wasn't just an old friend, or maybe she'd reclaimed the space he'd once reserved for her. I sat down on the couch and hugged my knees. The feeling of anxiety that had haunted me all day after my dismissal now became clear. This wasn't work. It wasn't a coincidence. This was something he'd been carefully hiding. And then I realized the most important thing. To find out the truth, you have to act carefully, but without action, you won't find out anything easily. That evening, I made a decision. Tomorrow, I'd try to look through his phone when he wasn't around. It was my first but necessary attempt to understand what was going on. I didn't know that there would be even more evidence ahead, even more lies, and perhaps even more pain to live with. But I understood one thing for sure. Something is falling apart in our house, and I cannot close my eyes to the signs that he leaves with his actions. The next morning began as usual, but I couldn't relax anymore. Michael had left for work, leaving the bedroom door slightly ajar. I got up without breakfast and went to the kitchen. A single feeling clung to me. I had to know the truth, no matter the cost. I remembered yesterday's photos of Emily and the dinner entry on Michael's calendar. Coincidence? No, I knew there was more to it. I decided to check Michael's email. I usually didn't, but now I needed some evidence. The email was password protected, but I knew he kept his browser open with auto login enabled on his work computer. And of course, there were emails. Not many, but enough to understand the direction. Can't wait to see you. Sent last night. Are you sure you'll be alone? An hour after the first email. Why didn't you come? And signed, Emily. At that moment, my heart sank. This wasn't just a message anymore. This was a regular correspondence. She wasn't asking about work. She was waiting for him. I heard the familiar sound of his keys in the door. Michael had come home. I quickly closed my laptop and sat down on the couch, trying to look like I was minding my own business. He walked in, took off his jacket, and glanced at me. Are you okay? He asked. Yes, I said calmly. But inside, a shudder of anger and fear held me back. You're home early today, he noticed. Yes, I nodded, continuing to look out the window. Michael went into the kitchen for coffee. I heard him press the coffee maker, and something about the rhythm struck me as odd. Usually he does everything quickly, silently, but now it was as if he was doing it on purpose. I picked up my phone and noticed a notification, a call from an unknown number. It wasn't saved as a contact. I didn't call, but I saw it was a missed call. Michael looked at his phone, as if he realized I'd noticed. His gaze froze for a few seconds. "It's a work call," he said, "just spam." But I knew it was a lie. That evening, he said again he'd be late at work. In fact, he'd gone to the restaurant Emily had been to the day before. I decided to check for myself. I parked nearby and took a few photos. Eric's car was there, just like yesterday. Through the restaurant window, I saw her silhouette. She was smiling, talking to someone at a table. I stood in the car and realized this wasn't just work anymore. It was a meeting he was carefully hiding. When Michael returned home, I was waiting for him in the kitchen. "Late?" I asked. "Long day," he answered evenly without emotion. "At the restaurant?" I clarified. He was silent. "Michael, I know," I said quietly. "You weren't alone." He didn't look up. A second of silence, and I realized he wouldn't deny it with words. Everything I'd seen with my own eyes and in his behavior spoke for itself. "Everything you saw was an accident," he finally said quietly. "I didn't want you to worry." I nodded, but I knew it wasn't an accident anymore. Deleted messages, photos, meetings, calls, they were all part of a single story, a story he carefully concealed. For the first time, I realized, to preserve myself, I would have to be strong and act decisively. And that evening, when he lay next to me again, I realized that trust doesn't crumble in a day. It crumbles piece by piece, and each day will be a new test. The next day started off hazy. In the morning, there was a strange feeling, as if the whole house was holding its breath. Michael left for work, as usual, saying he had an important meeting, but I no longer believed him. The passing weeks had shown that Michael's words now meant almost nothing. I decided to take action. I disconnected my phone from the Wi-Fi, picked up my laptop, and checked his email again. This time, I didn't limit myself to work emails. There was an archive of messages that Michael usually didn't clean out. Old emails, messages he hadn't deleted, and notes. And then it all became clear. Emily Harper, not just a colleague, not just a chance encounter. The messages were informal. Plans, meetings, photos of restaurants he'd been to without me. And one of the messages literally from yesterday. She wrote that she missed him and was looking forward to his evening. I realized that all the previous excuses were lies. Deleted messages, encounters at restaurants, calls from unknown numbers, they were all part of the same story he was hiding. And he was cautious, but too trusting of me, in that I noticed too much. I was waiting for him at home when Michael returned later than usual. He came in, took off his jacket, and tried to smile. "You're home early," he said. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I took out my phone and laptop, opened the emails, and showed them to him. "Michael," I said calmly, "explain this to me." He looked at the screen, then at me. His face went white. "Emma," he began. "No, don't start. I see everything, and the deleted messages too. You tried to hide all of this, but it didn't work." He looked down. The silence grew long. "Emma, I didn't want you to worry," he said quietly. "Do you think hiding the truth will make me feel any less sad?" I interrupted. "You met her, saw her in the evening, told her you'd be alone, and left me in the dark." He nodded, not looking up. Yes, I saw her," he finally admitted. It's not just work. I don't know how to say it." I exhaled. Every word was like a blow. Pain, betrayal, the feeling of being deceived all at once. But I knew tears wouldn't help. "So what now?" I asked evenly. He tried to say something, but I interrupted. "I can't trust you anymore, and I don't want to live in a house where I'm being deceived." Michael closed his mouth, as if preparing to defend himself, but I had already made my decision. "Tomorrow I'll look for a place to live." I said this calmly, firmly. "We can discuss what to do next, but I'm leaving you." He fell silent, speechless for the first time in years of marriage. I could see he understood the gravity of the situation. That evening, I gathered my things in the bedroom, looked at them, and thought, My life had changed. My job had been lost a few days ago, my trust just now. But now I had a choice. I could stay and suffer or move on, build my life without deception. When Michael lay down next to me, I didn't cry. I simply stared at the ceiling. There was silence inside. And for the first time in many years, I felt clarity. I knew one thing: to be happy, I would have to be strong and act. And at that moment, the decision had already been made. The story with Emily, the deleted messages, the secret meetings, all of it was behind me. I could no longer live a lie. And even though tomorrow would be difficult, I knew this was the right path. Not out of revenge, not out of anger, but for myself. That evening, Michael slept next to me, but we were already living in different worlds. My choice was made. And this was the first step towards freedom.